All right, now let me tee some things up for our panel. You know, when I've been covering visual effects for Variety for about 8 years, longer if you go back to freelancing. And while there's a lot more fuss over visual effects for feature films, you know, even the people at the Visual Effects Society have been saying out loud for a long time, the people in television are doing it almost as well on much less budget in much shorter time and with far fewer resources. So let's talk about that a little bit. Now, I also want to say there are 2 big trends that I see in television, and I'm hoping to kick these around with our panel. One is there's a trend toward feature film production values coming to television, lots more spectacle, an expectation from the audience of that kind of visual richness. And that means you get shows like Game of Thrones and Mad Men that are very visually rich and detailed, and visual effects are a part of creating that look. But at the same time, the audience is splintering. There are more channels. There are more shows. There's huge downward pressure on budgets, and that helps give rise to Real Housewives and reality television. And so how are visual effects bridging the gap between those 2 trends? Let's start out just by, I'm going to go down the panel. I'll start with Ron. We'll work this way. Okay. What are you working on now, and how does that tell us anything about those 2 trends?
Well, at the moment, I'm currently working on, I can't actually tell you the name of it. It's consulting on a Sci-Fi Channel movie. And it involves the destruction of one of the major US cities by some strange whirlwind thing. It's a real challenge because, again, the budget constraints of some of these sci-fi movies are extremely tight. And you know, the fact that the companies are able to produce in the region of 200 plus effect shots for these shows in a space of 4 or 5 weeks is just crazy. But we're able to do it now. I mean, we weren't able to do it 5 years ago even. So there's a very, very definite, as the technology progresses, unfortunately, we tend to throw more at it. So, you know, a shot that would take so much to render back in 1993, it still takes the same amount of time, but you're just getting more for your money, if you know what I mean. I don't know if that answers the question.
Chuck?
Currently, I've been in India working with a Reliance group there, kind of teaching them principles of stereo 3D. I'm probably the oddball on this panel because the only television work I did was Saturday Morning Kitty television more years ago than I care to remember. But that being said, I'm also consulting with a small company, guiding them in 2D to 3D conversions or remastering, as I like to call it. That being said, as someone who's primarily worked in film, I have to say the quality of the work that I see on television is amazing, you know? And particularly given, just as Ron said, the shorter periods of time to do it, less budget usually, and yet you see what you've seen up here and pretty consistently and a lot of really good stuff on television. And I would say if there were a difference between what's being done there, because a lot of the software is the same and a lot of the techniques are the same, maybe it's a matter of scale. You know, when you're composing for a large screen, and particularly stereo, but a large screen thing, you know, I think a scale. I think they have to have a little more weight, you know, a little more pay attention to kinetic energy and so forth, where on a small screen, I think because of the fast pace and editing and everything, I mean, stuff just seems to move quicker. Now, that's not to say it doesn't move quick in film as well, but anyways. Oh, can I make one quick plug?
Sure.
One of the guys that organized this, and that's Rob. He should be taken a bow as well because he created the virtual set that we used on Avatar, the whole Pandora and everything. It was his concept to be able to pull all that together so that Jim Cameron on the capture stage could actually have his virtual camera, which was basically an LCD screen in front of him, and the environment of Pandora was fed into that, as was the Na'vi characters, so that he could be on the stage, which is just a flat stage. I mean, there certainly was stuff that modular set pieces that would that the actors and stunt people could use. But he could look at that and he would see the Na'vi actors. He could direct the stunt people and the actors just by looking over the camera. And besides that, he's a great animator and knows how to rig things. And so I just wanted to mention that because Rob is really a talent, and you know, NewTek is lucky to have him.
Okay, Doug, you're up.
Well, first let me say that Gary Hutzel wishes he could have been here. I'm just like, you know, sloppy seconds. But, and you're not going to believe this, and I'm still trying to get over it myself. You know, Gary's a family guy, and at Christmas time and Halloween, he goes home and he climbs a ladder and he puts the lights up and he, you know, he dresses the house. And just last week, he was showing me the videotape of his house from Halloween. And this guy's a, you know, I mean, he's a visual effects guy that goes back to when they were shooting motion control on stage on Star Trek. And so you could imagine what the house looks like. You know, energy coming out the windows and stuff like that. But he was taking stuff down off the house about 5 days ago. And about 12 feet off the ground, he lost his footing on the ladder. And he slid down. He broke both legs. Anything to get out of talking to a bunch of people. I considered breaking both my legs too, because, you know, this is like, oh my God, look at these people here. But anyway, Gary, he really deserves all the credit for what's happened with Battlestar Galactica, and it really is an unbelievably unique situation for us. And I was really lucky when he called me when Enterprise went down. I remember I'd been on Star Trek for like 17 years. And the show was canceled, and I'm driving home, and I'm thinking, well, that's it. I'm probably, after a run of luck like that, I'm never going to work again. That's the end of that. And I get home, and there's a message on the answering machine, and it's Gary. And I know he's going to ask me to come to work on BSG. And I call him up, and he says, you know, Doug, I heard about Enterprise. I go, yeah, I know. He goes, yeah, but you know what? Every cloud has a silver lining. So that was it. I was on board. And I've been with Gary for like the last 6 years, and it really has been, and I guess we'll get into this later, the kind of setup that we have that's so unique. We're not a facility. We're actually an integrated part of the production like the art department is, which really changes things a lot. But what you were talking about how, I mean, it wasn't that long ago that there were 3 networks. And then you had, you know, some syndicated stuff, and then cable started peeking in there. But then the internet, the pie has been split so fine at this point that the studios, they're scared to death to invest money in a show. I mean, even when the Galactica pilot was done, the landscape was different, and they were willing to build big, interesting sets. But at this point, and I mean, who knows what the hell's going on when they cancel a show after 2 episodes? It's, you know, totally wacky. How do you know a show's any good after 1 or 2 episodes? It doesn't make sense. But I really think that although the industry is in kind of a tough spot and there isn't a lot of money to spend, they don't want to put out a lot of money for big expensive sets, it actually has never been a better time for people like us. Because what's happening, and what happened on Blood and Chrome, is that you could still do these shows and actually do them cheaper, with less of a budget than you had before, and go bigger than we were able to go on the last Galactica. I mean, Blood and Chrome really is amazing. We just finished it up. In 8 months, we did almost 2,000 shots with 10 guys. Now, that's not counting our compers. That's 10 CG guys, and some of the most amazing guys, too. Guys that you know, like Kyle Toucher and Dave Morton and Neil Zapata and Jesse Tovez. God, I hope I'm not leaving somebody out. I'm sure I'll get punched in the arm if I didn't later. But anyway, I think that our type of people, we're going to get more work because the studios are going to find out that it's actually less expensive to build these sets in the computer. I mean, a few years ago it was not. It cost more to do it as a visual effect. But now it's much cheaper. And actually, it gives the director a lot more leeway. When you're on stage and you're shooting and you've got a crushing deadline, and the gaffers and the lighting guys are waiting for you to line up your shot, and they say, I got to know, they have to know now because they got to get up there you don't have time to set up the most beautiful shot that you possibly can. But if they go in there and they just concentrate on getting the shots of the actors that they want, and we get the green screen shots, we could line up every shot so that there's something interesting going on in the background, or you know, the lines of perspective of the set are working with the characters. And well, I'm blathering on here. You go.
Eric.
Thanks, Doug. Hi, my name is Eric Hance, and currently I'm one of the CG supervisors at Pixmondo and working on Terra Nova. A little bit of backstory, you know, on the subject of. Thanks, Doug. Until my crew is here tonight, I love them dearly. On the subject of feature film work making its way onto the television screens, Pixmondo is an international company that works on big, beautiful feature films like 2012 and Green Lantern and Hugo coming out in the next week and change. So done a lot of really beautiful work over time. When they came together with Kevin Blank to start on Terra Nova, the goal was to take that incredible high bar that they'd been achieving in the film world and to bring it to TV screens. So I'm very honored to be just one part of that operation, of that group of people that take and do that beautiful work each week. Really, really thankful. It was started in 2001 by a real smart guy named Thilo Kuther. So we've benefited greatly from the great vision and high bar of quality that they had set ahead of time. So when it came time to start Terra Nova, the idea was, okay, how do we take these incredible film technologies and, again, bring them to the screen on a weekly basis? And certainly the answer, like all of us know, is the people. You really need the very best people. The software is fantastic. The software can do great things, but without the right people, it's nothing. So again, our operation looks very much like a feature film. We've got an animation director, awesome guy from Pixar named Colin Brady, and a really fantastic compositing supervisor and an on-set VFX soup named Jason Zimmerman. And then between animation and compositing is us on the CG generalists, and we take, and it's our job to make sure that the creatures are sitting right in the plate and to make sure that the subsurface scattering through the skin looks right and all the beautiful primeval vistas. So again, those things that you don't normally associate with a weekly television series, we've got this fantastic opportunity to reach out and try to achieve. And again, I'm so thankful and so blessed, again, by the crew that we have because they just don't quit. They take and they give it everything. So, you know, the software that we use is fantastic, but the people is really where I find that it really rests.
Let me ask you sort of an off-the-wall question. In movies, one of the things that we're seeing is that visual effects can be the star. Mm-hmm. I'll give away a little journalistic secret. When I go to look at for the visual effects Oscar contenders every year, the first thing I have to look at is the box office leaders for the year. That's the only category where that's true, because visual effects and animation have become box office drivers. I don't think that's really true in television yet. Actors and writing are still the star, although visual effects are becoming a more and more important piece of that as you see fantasy shows like Game of Thrones and things like that. So I'm wondering, is it liberating for you to not have that pressure, or do you wish you had got to have more attention on the visual effects in your shows? Anybody? You've got dinosaurs. I mean, your effects are in the commercials every week.
Yeah, you know, I've got to say that I'm a process person. My background is as a painter, so I love artwork. So I never want to hurry through anything. So in some ways, television is very liberating, and I've worked in TV and film. But TV is very liberating because you know that you've got probably about a week to take and make something as fantastic as humanly possible, and then you have to let go. So as a painter, I can remember in school, you know, working for weeks or possibly months on a painting. TV has certainly removed a lot of that from me. So in some ways, it's made me more productive and made me learn how to work more quickly and efficiently.
Ron, you've been doing this for a long time. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's the visual effects in shows like Terra Nova and Galactica are kind of unique, and they're the the sort of forefront. They're the real cherry on top of the cake of the visual effects work that's going on for television. The majority of the work that's going on for TV is really things like bullet hits, wire removals, blood splatters, fixes and production, armpit stain removal. I mean, no, seriously, we did that on Babylon 5, armpit stain removal. It's, they couldn't afford an extra shirt, but they could afford for us to rotoscope. But you know, that's the bread and butter of the visual effects industry for television. I mean, the shows where the visual effects aren't obvious, like Undercovers was every week, even though it was shot in Los Angeles, every week they go to a different location. So you do location changes. You know, you take Olvera Street and you turn it into Spain. You take Olvera Street and you turn it into Paris. And you know, that sort of stuff is much more of the bread and butter. These shows are really the flagship shows. They're the unique ones, and they're the ones that, you know, always walk away with the awards.
Yeah, well, I mean, for that reason, we've always felt tremendous pressure when doing the visual effects for Galactica, because, I mean, all you had to do was look at the internet the next day if we had a talkie episode. You know, people were upset. Where's the space battles? So we always felt a great responsibility. But, you know, the thing was that usually on Galactica, the story and the effects were very much intertwined, and because of that, we were often brought into the writer's room to come up with ideas for sequences. But you're totally right, and there's going to be more and more of that type of work, and we've even done more and more of it. I mean, we've done shots like, you know, a father and a son having a talk in the kid's bedroom, and they're shooted against green screen, and we build the entire bedroom. Now, who would ever even think that they wouldn't just put up 4 walls and some books and stuff like that? But it actually ends up being cheaper for them to do it that way, and we're going to see more and more and more of that.
Well, there's a lot of similar kind of work done in feature films as well, with rig removal, adding hair to someone's bald spot, for instance, and taking out wrinkles in some cases, and so forth. And when it gets down to pressure and speed, generally speaking, in feature films, when you start getting down to the end of post-production and they're putting everything together and they still don't have all the shots and they've run out of money, then I suspect that the guys that are working in feature films are experiencing exactly what you're talking about in television as well.
Yeah, I mean, also the turnaround times are getting absolutely ridiculous. I mean, in the last 2 years, I've just seen laughable turnaround times. The delivery of plates from production from a locked cut, so the background elements that are going to be used in a composite shot or whatever, being delivered on a Friday night, and the due date for the show delivery is Friday. So, well, you can have the weekend. Oh, thanks. You know, we've got 300 man-hours worth of stuff to do, and so we can have the weekend to do it. But that's very, very commonplace now. They're not locking these shows until the very, very, very last minute. There's a certain police procedural that you guys do that happens on an island somewhere out in the Pacific that will remain nameless, that they're famous for that. Absolutely famous for the plates coming in on a Friday to be delivered on Monday.
Huh. I mean, we hear about the same complaints in movies, but they're talking about it being compressed to weeks, not to hours.
Yeah.
Oh, that depends. I've worked with directors that it may not be hours, but it certainly is days. And there was a term that's been coined. A show was not locked; it's latched.
Nice. Oh man. So, but you know, the funny thing is, also in TV, there are now certain big, I would say, or mid-sized visual effects companies, Pixamondo, Zoic, a handful that are really making the reputation in television. But you don't have companies that are sort of the Titanic reputation and scale of ILM and Weta and Framestore. So you really are working with smaller companies. What does that imply for how you do a shot, how you have to think about a shot, or how you have to think about an episode when you're dealing with smaller companies and smaller teams?
Well, I mean, they say that the best innovation happens in small groups, and I'm a firm believer of that.
Well, there's no doubt. You know, for us, I think a lot of these issues that we're talking about, we haven't eliminated, but we've really taken control of on Galactica, because we are part of the production in the same way that the art department is part of the production or editorial is part of the production. We're in the same building with editorial. When we do shots, we take our shots personally down to Eric, our editor, and he cuts them in while we're sitting there. If they don't work, we run back and we change them. We don't ask for anybody's permission. That's okay, which makes a tremendous amount of difference. The approval, the chain of approval is not so great on Galactica. They really trust us after, you know, so many years of doing the actual show. But you got to remember that Gary started on Star Trek The Next Generation, where he worked with Ron Moore, and then through DS9. So by the time we got to Galactica, Ron totally trusted us. He knew us completely. So if something didn't work, we could take the initiative and change it. We wouldn't even have to go to Ron. Once we had it done, we'd show it to Ron, and he'd go, "Oh my God, I never would have thought of that. That's fantastic." You know, but to be able to be a part of the production and just launch into something if we see it's not working, it saves so much time. And really, that's the key to how we've been able to do so many shots in such a short period of time on Galactica, because we're actually in there, you know, with our sleeves rolled up, with editorial and cutting shots into the show and doing previs without, we don't need to get approval, we just do it. So it's really unique. I don't think I've ever been so closely intertwined with the actual production. It's never been so close to actually to the process of the making of the film. You know, we really feel like filmmakers. It's really unique.
You know, we've been talking a lot about the people, and certainly with a lot of productions, you get that fantastic long-term relationship of trust, which I feel like we've certainly gained with the studio at this point. But one of the things that really helps us a lot is the shorthand that we have with our crew. The people that I'm working with on this production, at least on the CG generalist side, Mark Scheimer, Janet Sheegan, Ed Ruiz, who's my lighting and shading killer guy. Seriously, without having that shorthand with those people that I've worked with for years, it would be a lot harder. In terms of the work that you see there, you see that, you know, Terra Nova has an incredible variety of work. Some of it is the creatures, which is certainly the top billing point most of the time. But you've also got big, beautiful primeval vistas. You can't get away with always just, you know, shooting a live set. You've got to have something that feels extraordinary.
I'm going to jump in with something here that is not directly on point for this,
Sure.
But I've got Chuck Comisky on a panel, and I'm not going to miss my opportunity to ask Chuck Comisky this question. We're now looking at the dawn of the 3D television era. And I'll tell you, by the way, I've seen in Variety announcements of 3D television going back as far as 1950. But this time it seems like it's really going to happen. What should we as an industry be looking for as suddenly you start having to do shows like Terra Nova or Blood and Chrome and think about 3D for the future?
Well, I think conceptually it's 3D is probably, whether it's flat or stereo, it still gets down to composition. And I think good composition, you have plenty of depth in an image. I mean, if you look at Avatar as an example with Cameron, and granted Cameron is pretty exceptional, but you know, every frame is designed, the composition is good. When I was setting stereo and all the performance capture, you know, you start out with really good, you know, composition, and it became pretty straightforward to figure out, you know, what the stereo should be. As far as television is concerned, for the moment I'm kind of disappointed, and I'm kind of disappointed in the sense that it's kind of like everyone is waiting for something to happen. There's a lot of 3D, the statistics I'm reading, a lot of 3D sets out there, but there's damn little being broadcast anywhere. And the bulk that I've seen, not everything, but the bulk of what I've seen, including some of the sports stuff, it's like 3D is still being treated as a gimmick. In other words, it's way too much stereo, way too much depth, everything they're pushing out of the screen and into the living room. And I just have to say, I've been over with some friends at their house watching some sports things and channel flipping between the 4 channels that are doing. And I got to tell you, after about 20 minutes, you know, they were saying, you know what, my eyes are kind of tired. Let's just watch this on 2D. And so I think I think the concept of treating 3D stereo as a gimmick is going to have to go. One of the things that Cameron started right at the beginning of Avatar were two things. Didn't want to tire the audience's eyes out because it was going to be at least a 3-hour movie. Turned out to be 2.5, but nonetheless. And the second thing was he wanted the stereo to enhance the story, not be the star. He wanted an audience to sit down, and when they got in the theater after the first 10 or 15 minutes, they were obviously aware of the stereo environment, but hopefully they would forget that. And I think of the people that I've talked to, we were very successful at that. And I think we need to develop something like that on TV. Now, granted, there certainly will be times when you want to use 3D as a gimmick, but not all the time, and not to the degree that you're wearing people's eyes out watching it.
Well, Jim has been very aggressive talking about how you're going to be able to shoot with the same camera positions. You're going to be able to have 2D and 3D off a single camera position and perhaps a single rig. You know, essentially saying to people, you're going to be able to do what you're doing now and get 3D out of it. In visual effects, that's not really going to be true because at the very least, you're going to have to render 2 eyes. And budgets are already squeezed, time is already squeezed. Are you even talking about what are we going to do when we get to the 3D world for these shows?
You know, I'll tell you, we were ready to do it on Blood and Chrome. We did tests of all the sets in 3D, and we sent them to the, the upper echelon. And there's just a fear. They're afraid to take a chance. But we could have done it. And it looked amazing. I mean, we were amazed. We were blown away by it.
Are you talking about virtual sets or physical sets?
Virtual sets, yes. But we use Lightwave's, standard 3D, renderer. And
so no, they're not even asking you to future-proof the show and maybe stash away a 3D version that you could release on Blu-ray? Or...
It could happen, actually. It really could, because we pushed to do it, and it was totally doable. Totally doable. But they just, they didn't want to. They were afraid. They didn't want to take the chance.
It's not encouraging for us fans of 3D to hear that the Sci-Fi Channel is afraid of 3D.
Yeah, well. But I think I was just reading just a couple of days ago. Was it the LA Times or with Scorsese talking about his 3D picture, and he's like, "Don't resist it." He says, "Just go for it, do it." And it's going to happen. It has to. It will. There's no doubt about it. It's a storytelling tool, and it will eventually.
And in some ways, 3D. I mean, as someone who's been ranting in Variety about the problems of 3D theatrical exhibition, it's sort of a pleasure in some ways to sit down with a good 3D television that it's bright, it's clear. I don't have to worry about salt and butter on the glasses, I wanted to ask you guys, as I said earlier, one thing that TV still has is that the acting and the writing are still the star. Okay, they're really selling Terra Nova with the dinosaurs, but still, even at Terra Nova, it's really that cast.
It is.
So, with these flagship shows, if you call them, you really have to make these effects interact with those stars and with that ensemble. It's not even just one person. Sometimes it's a lot of people in a frame. So, let's talk a little bit about the challenges of having those stuff interact believably and consistently week after week. You want to take a shot at that, Ron?
Yeah, again, the tools for doing this have just got so much better in leaps and bounds over the years. In terms of being able to light and composite things so that they look more realistic, integrating them into the set. There are tools now that automate tracking really, really effectively and efficiently. And the thing is that a lot of these productions they're pressed for time. I won't say they're lazy. I don't think that's the truth. They're pressed for time. A lot of times where you want to set up a shot where it should really be a locked-off shot to try and save money or whatever, they just don't do it. They do it handheld, no tracking markers, nothing, and then afterwards we have to fix it. Well, the tools are there now to be able to do that, thankfully. Yeah, it's just, again, technology just leaps and bounds. It's a constant change, and keeping ahead of it is actually a challenge.
You see, Ron, when you pull a miracle off, that then becomes standard operating procedure.
Oh, that's a problem. Yeah, exactly.
Now, we just saw dinosaurs interacting with people in your clip, so I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that. just how do you pull that off on such a tight schedule and with such a limited budget?
Well, I'm not completely qualified to talk about the whole of that subject. Kevin Blank was on set and made sure that, you know, the interactions were clear, you know, the eye lines were good, and, you know, obviously making sure that people were in the right place. After, you know, he does that hard work and gets that choreographed right, then of course we take that and we do our best to make sure that the vision that was there is pulled off and is carried out. And the wonderful thing is you get some things that are expected, great, okay, this all laid out like this. And other times you find fantastic, well, this could have worked, but now we can actually do this. Like, for example, one of the shots where the camera takes and cranes up and around wasn't a shot that was originally planned. But once Kevin got back with the footage, he realized, wait a minute, we don't just have to shoot it from here. Now we can bring it all the way around. So a lot of it is certainly like the energy and the creativity that somebody like him brings to the process. And then it's you know, the rest of us running alongside going, how awesome can we make this? So.
Doug, I mean, I'm a BSG fan. I'm looking forward to the new series. You know,
well, I mean, we had it was really, really interesting what we had to do. And I mean, for instance, we're lucky Gary's on stage when we're shooting all the green screen stuff, and he's a very strong presence, and this guy knows what he's talking about and what he's doing. I mean, he's been through everything. So the set stuff is really under control, but you couldn't have a better person on set. But when you have for instance, the CIC in Galactica, where you have a lot of consoles, where people are working at them, and that the camera is following our characters across a balcony, down a set of stairs, across the CIC, around some console, stop, pick up a cup of coffee, drink it, then go down to the center of the CIC where the main ops table is and have a conversation. And there's nothing, it's all green screen. So first of all, to track all of that, to motion track that is a nightmare. I mean, really motion tracking, even today with the technology the way it is still more black magic and voodoo than anything. Mm-hmm. It really is. I mean, it's like every time we have a track shot, I'm like, oh my God, is it gonna work? But when you're walking people in and around consoles and up and down stairs and stuff like that, and basically the director is taking Gary's word for what's gonna be there, that is really, I mean, honestly, when I was doing the CIC shots, I'm like, Gary, I don't know how are we ever gonna do this? I can't even imagine it, you know, but it worked out amazingly. When you see the CIC, I mean, honestly, I swear to God, you're going to be blown away when you see the CIC, how it works. And we did expand the CIC out some. You know, the idea on Galactica is that this is the ship 40 years earlier, when Galactica was the tip of the spear. When we saw the ship on the Edward James Olmos show, it was a third-string ship. They'd been stripping it for years. You know, it could launch like maybe 100 Vipers. This ship can. When you watch Galactica and you see 1,000 Cylon Raiders, a cloud of Cylon Raiders attacking the Galactica, well, look, when that ship was designed, it was designed to meet that threat. So the idea is that this ship can launch 1,000 Vipers. So when you see the hangar bay and you see the activity and you see people walking in and around in lifts coming up and down with Vipers and cranes carrying Vipers back and forth, that was just, you know, I don't want to use the word, it was a nightmare of coordination and stuff like that. It really was a wonderful, fantastic challenge to do that. But God, you know, we have this amazing sizzle reel that we did in the show, and they won't let us show it. It's so disappointing because you just, you know, we're so proud of it. All right, I'll shut up now.
We're almost out of time. We're almost out of time, so I'd like to go down the road, starting with Eric. Just tell our audience, if you would, what trends do you see coming in TV visual effects, and what should we be looking out for over the next few years?
Wow. Well, I think everybody's kind of guessing right now whether 3D is going to stay or go, whether it's going to be, like you said, a driving force of creativity or something that people kind of look at and go, maybe we'll try that again in a decade. But considering what our crew has pulled off with Terra Nova, I have no doubts, you know, as we've done experiments, you know, that we can do a beautiful 3D version of it. In terms of future 3D trends, certainly with high-profile shows like Terra Nova, I see a continued growth in the variety of software and certainly the variety of type of talent that's getting used there. So again, methods that would have only been used in film in the past, going from this piece of software to that, I think are going to become more commonplace, certainly because of developments like geocache and FBX in Lightwave 10. Different software programs, I think, are going to talk to each other better. So at least from a software end, I see things going the realm of a bigger pipeline, but not necessarily it's slowing things down. But the bigger pipeline and the stronger talent will result in bigger and bigger and more beautiful work.
Doug.
Yeah, you know, I think that it's going to be literally an explosion of more of the type of stuff that Ron's talking about, where they're building less sets and we're doing more and more of it against a green screen. I think that is really going to that's going to explode. We're going to see, once they realize how much money they could save. And really, Blood and Chrome demonstrates that unbelievably, what you could do with nothing. You know, no sets, nothing, just green. I mean, when I watched the show the first time, 90 minutes and nothing but green, I almost had a heart attack. You know, it's like, oh my, you know. But when you see it now, every one of these sets is a real place. It's really there, and you believe it, you know. So I think that when they realize how much money they saved and what they get, and it's actually more than they could have gotten if they went and they put the money into building the sets, much more. The scope is much, much bigger on the show, and it cost a fraction of what the last show did.
Chuck.
Well, my limited experience in television, Saturday morning kiddie television notwithstanding, and commercials and so forth. I mean, I think I would like to amplify what both you gentlemen have said in terms of the technique, software, and so forth, but again, just emphasize that it's the vision of the people that are creating the material and the artists that are doing it, and I emphasize artists because even, you know, a lot of times people that are sitting there, you know, getting eye strain doing roto and stuff like that aren't really appreciated because it takes a lot of talent to do that, and probably a lot of you in the audience are aware of that. So how does that affect what's going to happen? I think things are going to get better. I think there are going to be some things that get automated, for instance, roto and rotomation and so forth. Clean plates, when that's what you have to do when you're pulling stuff out, that applies more to stereo. But I don't think stereo for a large audience acceptance is around the corner, but it is coming. And it's definitely something that we need to be aware of. And like I said, the thing I think most is appreciation for the artists. As a supervisor, I mean, I'm very concerned with the people that I work with because I'm only as good as their work.
And Ron.
Definitely virtual locations, I think you're going to see more and more of that because it is easier to do now. Well, it's possible to do now. And it's not that long ago where you just couldn't make it work financially or any way at all. And with Blood and Chrome and V and shows like that, where they're doing a lot of virtual set work, it's really sort of taking it steps further. The other thing that I think is happening is that there's always been a certain amount of trickle down from places like ILM to the TV world. It takes a little while. Like in the 90s, it was the morph. You know, the morph you'd see on a Michael Jackson video. And then it took a while before we were able to take care of it. Well, that gap is shortening. So that stuff that's being done on the features now is available to us to do on television budgets almost immediately. And, you know, I just think that's going to be ongoing. That again, it's more of a situation where it's not being run by the tools, it's being run by the artists. And they are able to do an awful lot more with the tools that they've got.
Thank you, Ron Thornton, Chuck Comisky, Doug Drexler, Eric Hance. That's all the time we have. Thank you for coming out.